Hey, huge thanks for letting me come hang out with you all. Special thank you and appreciate the warm welcome from Wes and all the hospitality and generosity for Right at Boom. Like, this venue is incredible. So, hey, I'm gonna be chatting a little bit about today about inside remote access markets and access as a service in the model. Now, I know we kind of wanted to focus on Black Hat and Alpha V, the ransomware gang. So we're gonna do a little bit of both. We're kind of gonna mix these two together, if I may. We'll talk about tradecraft, and then we'll get into some of those spooky, scary, dark web cybercrime shenanigans. But first, please let me go through the obligatory boilerplate stuff. Here's where we are, as Wes was just mentioning, for that framing content and that context, we are getting to the beginning of Boom. I realize this slide might be a little bit hard to read, so we'll touch on that a little bit more. Here's the boring, silly, dumb, who I am introduction slide. I realize you guys don't care. Like, quite frankly, hey, credentials, whatever. If you'd like to chat with me, you can track me down online. You can probably recognize the dumb red hair, but we'll have that again up on stage at the very end if you want to just reach out and chat. So let's get to the good stuff. Black Cat ransomware. Alpha V ransomware. Now, this got quite a name for itself. I'm sure you were flipping through that threat brief and some of the intel books here. Hey, they're doing a whole lot of damage. And I wanted to bring up, oh, hey, flashy news, headlines, journalists, always something to be chatting about. And the spooky stuff is that it's still happening, like right now. Like, what day is it today? It's February 23rd. Yeah, checking my watch. We're seeing some of those alerts, some of those announcements. Hey, new victim, new compromise, new hit. February 9th, 11th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. We had one over the weekend, actually. If anyone wants to come chat with me over at the booth, that would be really, really cool. Kind of give you the lowdown on that one. But if I may, hey, I don't mean to be doom and gloom with the constant onslaught of ransomware. Maybe at a little bit of a lighter note, hey, the one that hits me at home, very especially tugs at my heartstrings, they hit my favorite fast food chain. Anyone see that? They hit Five Guys. Come on. Sorry. Lighthearted, a little bit of a, hey, get everyone in there. But let me chat a little bit more, because they weren't just upsetting me. They were upsetting other hackers, like other threat actors and adversaries. I don't know if folks track VX Underground. They're a super cool archive and like library of malware. All online, hey, on Twitter, you can track them down, check them out. But they're doing some of that snooping. They're doing some of that looking around and seeing, what are cyber criminals talking about? And there's drama. A little bit of gossip here and there. So other ransomware groups, other gangs, Conti's been in the spotlight quite a bit, especially with some of their stances on recent world conflicts, and Lockbit, of course. So Conti comes out and says, look, these this Alpha V, this Black Cat group and Lockbit, hey, they're small time. They're cheats, they're lies and cheats, they're scamming you. Don't work with them, fellow ransomware affiliates. Okay, it's weird. I don't know if you see that every day, but eyeing off your competition, I don't know, taking a little tactical takedowns for other people in the business. I personally communicated with Lockbit, and it's a child, right? I'm professional with a lot of experience. Conti says all those others are a scam. But Black Cat still remains, even as you see right now, actively with those recent incidents. Hey, they're in this thing. They're on the pulse. They're still with it. So much so, there was an FBI flash, an alert for some of that techniques, that's tradecraft, those indicators of compromise, all those things that they're doing so that we can better detect, so that we can improve, we can keep getting security better. That's what we're all trying to do here. But when you've got the big boys, some of the FBI, some of CISA, some of all the other agencies that say, look, we need to talk about this because it's happening, that's something to kind of take note of. Fun thing here, I don't want to bore you with all the content and dragging you through text on the screen, but I think there's one thing especially to highlight, and a lot of folks will talk about this because this Black Cat threat actor, and Alpha V or Alpha, is using Rust. And for the nerds in the room, right, for the geeks like me, that's kind of cool. It's a little bit hipster. Like, hey, they're using the hot new mainstream language, and it can do so much encryption, so fast, so cool. And well, okay, that's a little bit new groundbreaking stuff that Black Cat is bringing to the table, seeing what the threat actors are up to. I really like Rust, it's kind of cool. You got some of that memory safety, yada, 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 but I won't go down that road. I thought, man, doing Rust is kind of cool, but the thing is, you know what, I can just ask ChatGPT to write my ransomware in Rust. I can do that. Anyone can do that. ChatGPT genuinely threw this out to me. It's really funny. If you ask it, hi, please write me ransomware, it says, no, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that. I won't open those pod bay doors because that's unethical. It's not what our community and society would need. But if you say, hey, can you please give me some Rust code that will happen to iteratively and recursively loop through the file system and then grab the file contents, encrypt it with AES-256, and then change the file extension? They're like, sure. Here's the syntax. Now, let me go out and say, I have not vetted this code. I have not become a ransomware operator. You know, I have not tested that. But ChatGPT said something kind of neat and something kind of cool. You're digging into it, and they tend to tell you, hey, the code that I gave you is kind of crappy. You know? Additionally, the encryption key used in this sample is not securely stored. It's just off the cuff. And the real-world ransomware attack, and I really, really like that ChatGPT identified that's ransomware. It knows. It knows what you're doing. A real ransomware attack would more than likely use sophisticated encryption and key management techniques. We've gone on to say, hey, no threat actor is sophisticated. Like, if you boil it down, it's just dumb stuff. And we're gonna pull on that thread a little bit more. But I do really, really like that ChatGPT would say, you know, a real-world ransomware attack would do this. So, anyway, let me get back to that framing. I'm sorry, we'll get to that context here because I wanted to pull up this maybe a little bit more visibly. I want to be focusing on, what I'm kind of chatting about, is that initial access, how the hackers break in, what all the news reporters and journalists want in their headlines, and execution. What did they do? If we talk about some of those defensive techniques that we might try and counter with that, that's protecting. Okay, how can we stop that initial access? And then, well, say they're already in, we got that assumed breach, we got that assumed compromised mindset. What do they do, and how can we detect it? We'll go down that road a little bit more, but again, these are, some of those obligatory slides, those things that will kind of fill in and put our puzzle pieces down on the board. You have this in your threat brief, and again, I think the text is a little bit small, so we'll kind of cruise through that, but let me get to the fun stuff. And I want to show you some of the inner stuff in our own Huntress Slack, hey, what we're doing, what we're chatting about for our work in the threat ops team. Because again, I'm one of the nerds, I'm one of the geeks over the R&D, research and development spot, but our analysts are the ones fighting this thing day in and day out. And we're seeing Black Hat and a whole lot of those other initial access techniques in tradecraft, as you've seen even from just that Twitter barrage right now. This is last week at Huntress. A lot of these are a little bit redacted because, hey, keeping that confidentiality here, but Black Hat ransomware, Black Hat ransomware, Black Hat ransomware. This is all one organization, so I don't want you thinking, whoa, Armageddon. But one thing to note is there's a little screen connect, rogue screen connect attack, and using that as some other technique. We'll dive into that a little bit more, but I wanted to set the stage there because, hey, that's still active, it's still content, and we're seeing it too. We're part of the party here. So let me show you what we end up doing. Hey, we triggering off, finding, we see this incident, and look, this is a critical incident because ransomware could very well spread throughout the environment. So I want to drill into a couple different things here. We track this with Windows Defender, our antivirus that we're managing with Managed Antivirus, and that gives us the signal that we can latch onto and see what are you doing from that antivirus perspective. A couple others up there, but they note Black Hat ransomware can typically occur from a ConnectWise screen connect or exploits from an unpatched Microsoft Exchange server. Still? It's still out there? Okay, I don't want to drive down that road just yet, but they note here, this is the initial access of Black Hat, one of the most common and most visibly seen techniques in tradecraft. But stupid Microsoft Exchange, it never dies. I don't know if you remember some time ago when we were looking at Hafnium, hey, looking at that sapphire pigeon that Red Canary was helping track down here. We were asking about this. We were trying to bring this out to the community over on Reddit, over on r/MSP. In the days yonder of proxy logon, and then proxy shell, and then proxy not shell again and again and again, it's like, man, this thing never dies. If we want to pivot just super quickly to that protection aspect, patch your freaking Exchange server, guys. Sorry. But that is something that I think I want to note, and because while this still continues and drags on and carries on, we've seen a little bit of a resurgence, super recently. I think December is when it kind of kick-started, and you still see the embers of the wildfire. But one of our, great friends, great folks over at Huntress, this is Dre. He's one of our fellows in the United Kingdom, because we have, some analysts over in the UK, some in Australia, so we can get that 24/7, eyes on glass buzzword stuff. But he was digging into some incident, and he saw the threat actor was pulling down tools from an external online site. That's the IP address 179.60, yada, yada, yada. You don't need to know, it doesn't matter. But those files that he were pulling down were still live in public. They were still accessible. And kind of wild, because if you wanted to dig into some of those, and I wish I gave you a better screenshot here, but one of those, I don't know if you can see it, is poc.py, proof of concept. Like a proof of concept exploit in a Python script. Neat, wild, interesting. That was a proof of concept to exploit proxy not shell, one of the latest, big blazing vulnerabilities for Microsoft Exchange. And this wasn't all that too long ago. It got a little bit of news. We were chatting about it. CrowdStrike came out with this super cool article. CrowdStrike is tracking this new exploit method for Microsoft Exchange, bypassing proxy not shell mitigations. Super sweet. They kind of had a little note here. There is an external researcher outside of CrowdStrike that was tracking this down and threw it up out online, because Dre said, community, you can have it. Look, if you want to dig into it, you can play with it. There it is. So I think they gave us a little footnote, which is cool. Thanks. And that's Huntress jumping in, saying at the front lines. But while we were doing that rapid response, this is around December, bear in mind. But if I might go back, I think I might be able to. I'm not sure with the slide. There's a note here that all of this due diligence that we were doing was for the Play ransomware, which is not Black Cat. And I think that's an interesting point to make, because we're supposed to be talking about Black Hat. But you've got other ransomware groups in the game. We mentioned Conti, we mentioned Lockbit, we now got Play as part of the cast of characters here. But they're noting, when we're doing our due diligence, we're seeing a decent number, double digits of Exchange servers hit, a couple that did get successfully compromised. And I don't mean to bore you with a lot of this, but I did want to showcase, that's what we're tracking. And we were digging into this because, again, that should be the Play ransomware, not strictly Black Cat. But peculiar, because in a lot of those cases and a lot of those other similar ones, we tend to see the usual execution aspect. If we're seeing initial access as some of these unpatched services, Microsoft Exchange, now what? Execution. Let's see their post-exploitation. What do they do? And this is table stakes, if I may. Like, local admin, backdoor account, little hacker username that they create for themselves. Of course, we're gonna slap Screen Connect on there, so we've got that implant, we've got something we can kind of get back in with and still use. They dump credentials or potential memory with Task Manager using LSASS, some of the credentials that might be in there. So here's just on the screen, just kind of a showcase of our Screen Connect client present on that box. But that's the norm that we tend to end up seeing. But I was thinking, you know what, if this was all supposed to be Play, the Play ransomware gang, if this was all supposed to be all that initial access through Microsoft Exchange or these unpatched services, what do we do when we look at Black Cat? Again, the focus of what we're chatting about at Right a Boom. So here's a little bit of a breakdown of all those critical Black Cat ransomware incidents that we sent out over the past couple months. I realize, again, this is small text, so it might be hard to see. So I tried to add a little bit of color. Maybe that's a little bit easier to see. All those different color indicators is a different organization. Org A, Org B, Org C, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that timeline is in June. Maybe that timeline is August, December, September, some in January of this year, right? And I tried to note what signal we're tracking this down from, managed antivirus or our EDR, and what other stuff's at play there. Are we working with Defender, or do we have any other, maybe AVs or next-gen stuff in the mix? But I think what might be most interesting is if you could see, and I want to get the slides to you, I'm sure I can. Oftentimes they have the executable that actually detonates and fires the ransomware. Sometimes it's like the weird couple letters, or even just numbers, 33.exe. I've seen some as simple as locker.exe. And I've seen some even that like alfv.exe. You might be able to see that there. There are some that even have an inkling of the potential victim name. Like say it was, hey, Middletown Security, maybe the executable is middle.exe or middletown.exe, something along those lines. Obviously, if you tend to see some of those as an executable, that might be weird. So good thing to know. Still tracking onwards though, because how did play tend to have some of the same sort of attack vector, of course, Microsoft Exchange, if not just because it's as prolific as it is, but then the similar tradecraft, similar stuff. And how did Black Cat or some of the other ransomware groups do the similar tradecraft, initial access and execution here? So let me pour into those initial access models, that access as a service, those inside remote access markets. And if anyone has seen a Huntress presentation, hey, we love to showcase some of this stuff because it's weird. It's spooky, it's a little bit, oh, what are those hackers doing in those dark web forums or the underground sites over on Tor, in the dark web, in the hidden onion sites. Some folks might have seen xss.is. We chat about that one a lot, known, hey, hacker forum. A couple of these, there is breach forums or breach.vc. Exploit.in, that one's pay to play. You have to give however many Bitcoin or Doge to get in there. I haven't done that. I don't have any Doge. But another one is cracked.io, maybe raid forums if folks were in there. I wanted to get one of the FBI seizure notices up here because those are just wild to see when they fall off the edge. Anyway, I wanted to dig into one of these because one of them, Black Cat, has been especially active in. And this is where they chat, where they hang out, where all those potential forums, and you might buy or sell and trade in the marketplace, in this industry of cybercrime, access. Are folks familiar with initial access brokers? Kind of, sort of, maybe. So say you go to the local grocery store and, hey, someone has already grown the crops that you want to buy. Someone's already, hey, put together, they've grown the tree that gave you the apple, and that's it. You're good. You got what you need because all you wanted was that. You got in parallel and access. But what if you wanted a different thing? What if you didn't want just one apple, but you wanted 1,000? I don't know. Hey, maybe you're feeding folks, maybe you got some event catering going on. Have folks heard of wholesale access markets? Sort of, kind of. So that's taking this parallel in the analogy of the grocery store. That's like Costco. That's like BJ's, that's Sam's Club. That's where you buy in bulk. And it's wild to see some of these where they say, hey, look, I got a deal for you. I've got 9 million database dump data with full info, social security numbers, account numbers. They call this fulls in that kind of dark web leet speak here. And this individual, that profile picture, by the way, is the default on that forum, so you might see this character a few more times, but it's a different user in cases. They say, hey, this data contains the headers of their email address, their name, their phone number, their cell phone number, their full addresses, bank routing number, potentially bank account number, bank name, and that's sketchy. Let me add a disclaimer here. Take this with a grain of salt. Not often things that you might see on the dark web are legitimate. Some could very well be scams. But they were nice. So they said, hey, here's a sample that you could download. And they gave an like anonymous file hosting link. So if you wanted to, hey, put your money where your mouth is. Here's how you could contact me on Telegram. But here's that sample. Sample E2222. And if you want to go check out that link on Anon Files. I had to go look for you all. Curiosity killed the cat here. I want to go see. Then, of course, have redacted what would be their last name, their email, their addresses, their bank, their social security numbers, yada, yada, yada. Real or fake, a little bit spooky. And I wanted to note that this could very, very well be used for a lot of that social engineering. Even if it's not, hey, let me hit a sexy vulnerability, let me hit the latest CVE exploit exchange. What if I just called you up and asked you to help me with banking? Because, hey, there's some transaction that isn't going through and I need you to verify this info. Whatever. Social engineering, hey, you can extrapolate and imagine whatever you might like to, but I think that's odd and peculiar. And there are a whole lot of these. We've showcased these a little bit, and I hope that text is okay to read, but here's VPN access to a couple organizations. RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, of course, for sale. $4,000 if you want to buy in bulk. A couple of these. Private VPN, some things that have already sold in this seller's market. Kind of wild and kind of cool. If you want to hit them up on Talks, if you want to hit them up on Jabber, hey, they want to be that business representative. They're an entrepreneur too. That's a talk track in a road that I've gone down before, but I think you see the customer service. You see what they want to bring to the table for their own support queue and calls and marketing and sales for cybercrime. That's all part of that initial access model, whether it's info stealers that are bringing that in for them or whether they're building their own business. But the fun stuff, let me get back to alpha, let me get back to Black Hat, because, I don't know if you can see it up here, ALFV is in the username just above that profile picture, and they say, hey people, good news. Our mentor, I guess cyber criminals have mentors too, they agreed to provide compiled versions of Black Hat. So if you want it, you can get it. You'll be able to contact him directly. I wanted to show you that you could. AG, I forget the acronym there, but he'll also provide XMatter source code, so you can build it and build it yourself. Have we chatted about XMatter already yet with any of the previous talks? Is anyone familiar? XMatter is their tool for exfiltration, for pulling stuff out of the network. And he says, hey, if you want to go check it out, hit up our ghost shop. It's kind of weird. And they say, hey, whoops, this account is actually banned. Turns out you can't really do a whole lot of that cybercrime soliciting. In some ways that he might have been doing, I think he leaked something that was a little bit not appropriate against their rules. So in that red box down there, you might be able to see ALFV was banned from the forum. But there's still some banter. There's still some conversations because folks are jumping at the bits here. What's his account name? What's his Telegram? How can I get access to Black Cat ransomware? How can I start my own little shindig, wreaking havoc and all that, taking down 5 guys? But there's this weird trend, if I may get into, because ALFV especially, and this user, this Black Hat representative one way or another, they have a very strange, like kind of good intent, if that's even what you could say, like a strange sort of wholesome, like, hey, I want to bring things out for other fellow hackers and threat actors and adversaries. They include these Streamlabs links that you might be, or streamable, that you could actually go see a video of, hey, someone compiling that Black Cat executable, that ransomware detonator, and even their leak site, if you want to go track down their Onion leak site over on the dark web in that site. If you wanted to, you certainly could. I didn't want to get any of those screenshots for you. I hadn't just yet. I see some folks taking pictures like, yeah, I want to get that leak site. Anyway, weird duality because I think, and we get to some further conversations, that there is a mirror image of what we do in the cybercrime syndicate. And I've been kind of drawing that parallel, like, hey, they're entrepreneurs too, they're building their business. But when we even try to get us together to do great things and to move and shake the community, we tend to say a rising tide raises all ships, a great thing, but it's so weird when there's a mirror image of that for cyber criminals. This is a post on one of their online dark web onion sites where the text is small, so I'm gonna zoom in just a moment. But ALFV, Black Cat ransomware, comes out and says something that no one has said before. They bring something to the table that you haven't seen. This is kind of cool, new venture for the ransomware groups. They say, all of our victims, our customers, all that, customers in a free pen test, right? All our victims and the data leaks is now publicly available, indexed and searchable. If you wanted to, you could search for John Hammond and see if I hop in there. You could search for password, you could search for net account number or anything that you might like. And they say, we want to make this data more accessible and usable for the cybercrime community. Weird. And they say soon, all this is going to be published on the ClearNet. So you don't need Tor, you don't need the hidden onion sites to be able to go access it. Hey, Google will index this crap. I don't know. Spooky. If folks are interested, this is what that collection and indexed search site looks like. It says, hey, this is how many files we have, this is how many things that we've indexed. Right now, I think that's about 1 terabyte or so. And again, you can see the input box here. Hey, if you wanted to query with a wildcard, if you wanted to enter some specific term, search through every single victim of every single data that we've ever leaked before. And Black Cat's paving the way. They're setting their foot and being first to market with this now soon to be publicly accessible on the open internet. If you want to dig into their collections, I've redacted, hey, just out of generosity, I think, or I don't know, courtesy for victims, for past victims, but you can see maybe, again, small text, 2.4 terabytes, 600 gigs, 1 terabyte, lots and lots of stuff. That's probably kind of a boring slide, but I do want to show you that, and especially looking at other ransomware leak sites, whether it's Lockbit, whether it's Conti, it's this similar sort of thing, where we give you the victim name, their description, and how much we've stolen. But anyway, maybe that's an interesting one. I do want to get back to the tradecraft, though. I hope that was kind of a fun, jolly jaunt through the dark web cybercrime shenanigans of Black Cat ransomware and some of those forums. I will admit a lot of those are potentially low tier because that's just where some of the bottom of the barrel threat actors will hang out and go purchase a new RAT or a new C2 server or some of that initial access. But it's still out there. It's still a thing. Anyway, back to tradecraft. Initial access, we were chatting about Microsoft Exchange, maybe some of that dumb social engineering, those unpatched services, all those things that open the door. But then what do they do when they get in? Probably the easy stuff, right? They want to clear their tracks, they want to wipe away their fingerprints. And so this one, I don't know, again, if any nerds are in the room, the WEVT util.exe is the Windows event log utility. And that following parameter, or that argument of the word right next to it, CL, is to clear. Clear the event log. Kill all of those little signals and audits and things that might give you visibility. But this is also kind of loud. I don't know if you can see at the very bottom, there's like 100 pages of this thing, because they clear every single event log over and over and over. That's probably pretty easy to detect if you're looking for it, if you're hunting it down in the first place. But that wevutil.cl will keep things clear. Another very, very common technique for ransomware actors, and this might be boring table stakes again, but they'll clear a lot of your usually internal volume shadow copies. So Windows, your operating system, will just oftentimes naturally take copies for you. Those are those volume shadow copies that you might be able to use for backups. Ransomware actors say, no. Don't do that. Don't restore from backups. We want to leave you in that hindered space, so you pay us, because money is the motivator. Hence, folks in that wholesale access market trying to sell stuff and make a quick buck. But there's some tradecraft in here. Hey, we're using WMIC, WMI. That command line sucks, by the way. But if you're digging into the Windows management instrumentation, you can pull some interesting info, like the unique identifier of this device, maybe other potential network shares, maybe even. But, of course, kill those volume shadow backup copies. This, by the way, if folks are interested, is some of the EDR kind of alerting that we'll end up offering for some of the sweet stuff Huntress brings to the table. But that's wild to be able to see it outright, and oftentimes you get a very cool tree here. But there's more to it. If you want to go see what changes they make, what little fingerprints they leave behind, they are tweaking and turning the Windows registry, oftentimes overlooked because it's so freaking massive. Windows registry, by the way, if folks just happen to not be familiar, that giant database collective called a dictionary of configuration settings for how your computer works. So one of those super special switches that they could hit is, bear with me, max MPXCT. And that is the registry key and the value that will kind of display or choose how many connections you might have over SMB, that server message block. Oftentimes used, SMB often for moving laterally throughout the network and actually just doing PS exec, some of those hackers and pen testers here. But why not amp that up to the highest possible value, 65,535, so we can keep spreading ransomware as quickly as we can. Those registry tweaks are one of those things that Black Cat will do. Now, I want to drive a point home here, because we're seeing this, and I think, hey, another vendor might be seeing this, and another party might be seeing this, and another organization might see this too. And when we bring out some of that research or that threat intel, you're going to see a lot of the same stuff. So we kind of do our own homework, right? We're not in this fight alone, we're in this together. So we see, what are other folks seeing? This is Microsoft's article. They say, the many lives of Black Cat ransomware. Check it out. Delete volume shadow copies. Get the UUID. Kill the event logs. Change the registry values. Yep, cool, thumbs up. We're seeing it. But all of this might be staging the Big Bang, right? All of this might be the quick and easy stuff that we'll try to clear our tracks, we'll get ready to detonate, and then we do. Again, that might be 33.exe. That might be, I don't know, USB.exe as a random three-letter acronym. So one of the wild things about this is because it's built in Rust and that cool hipster mainstream languages, they give you the manual. They give you the RTFM, like, hey, if you want to learn how to use our ransomware, here's the help file. Here's all the info that you could pass in these arguments. And I realize that might be a little bit tough to read, but there are some really, really wild flags. You can say, hey, I don't want to spawn impersonated processes on Windows. You can say, hey, don't propagate across network shares. Don't propagate to any of these defined servers. Don't kill or stop virtual machines if I land on an ESXi host or like a VMware vCenter. Don't wipe those snapshots. You can toggle those on and off, and you can customize your ransomware detonator. The access token is the absolutely mandatory one, because that is the identifier for this victim. We see that all the time, and so that's redacted and obscured. But, boom, frowny face, ransomware, whoops. The ransom node is very, very normal, and Black Hat will use only a little standard schema where they say recover files, but in the middle of those you have a randomly generated 7-character alphabetical letters, usually all lowercase, 6 to 7 characters in the middle there. And that's, again, another telltale sign of Black Hat ransomware. But it's the usual ransomware node that maybe we've all seen, or seen before, or something like it, whether it's on your own devices or out in chats with us. Anyway, hey, you'll see this host has been isolated. Huntress took that machine away from its friends because we don't want that ransomware to spread any further. But big sad. So again, bringing this all back to kind of what we wanted to stage here, inside of your threat brief and inside of that booklet that you've all been working with here. How do we protect? The dumb stuff. Hey, patch. Hey, remove some of that remote access server, or at least know your own inventory. Have your baseline. Sometimes I don't know if I want to go up and ask the question, but do you have an asset and application list? Is it maintained? Is it updated? Who owns it? Can you point to that person? Questions to ask yourself when you want that harsh gut check. Another big thing, when we cruise into the detection recover phase, a lot of that relies on your visibility. It relies on, can you see the event log being cleared? Will you know when that volume shadow copy just gets flushed? So I'm kind of keeping an eye on time because I want to make sure that we can still get to some conversation and get you all to lunch. But I did want to bring you in on some of the more inner conversations. So I don't know how well this will be displayed on the screen, but this is Max. Max Rogers, one of our head of the Threat Ops Center, of the analysts that are working that 24/7 to make sure, hey, can we hunt down all those adversaries? And this is when, way back in April, I think we caught this flyby in April of 2022, where he linked this FBI notice that you saw at the very, very beginning of the talk, and he said, we saw this group hit our partner just a bit ago. The listing of the indicators of compromise or the detection opportunities that they were so simple. They had stuff called mimikatz.exe. They had stuff called beacon.exe. This group is clearly not concerned with being caught. So I don't know if that's a slap in the face. I don't know if that's a reality check. I don't know what it might be, but I think it's still something to note. And there are others, again, in the community, in the industry, where, are folks familiar with Florian Roth or CyberOps? Has anyone ever heard that name? Cool, a couple. Florian Roth, incredible guy. Always bringing out Yara rules, Sigma rules, new detection engineering, new opportunities, new things that we can better security with in a very public and accessible way. But when all this Black Hat craze was happening, whether it's 2022, whether it's 2023 right now, he said, oh, they're mocking us, aren't they? Like, taking a look at those indicators of compromise, running WMIC, killing IIS in cases, deleting shadow copies, clearing the event logs. He has this meme. He's big on memes. He says, it's like a cat falling through the ceiling. It's knocking over vases, it's hitting the piano. You should know, because it's loud. So I see that, hey, okay, we should be detecting this. Florian Roth, I don't know if folks have the time to listen to or know of him, but Kyle Hansloven, he's the CEO over at Huntress, our good friend. He calls himself the chief janitor, but he's very, very good at bringing out a hot take. He's very good at kind of, I've said the words golden sword before because he had such a sharp statement that he even gave to a reporter. In one conversation when there were widespread incidents and vulnerabilities and mass exploitation, he said something that I'll never forget because it stings me. And I say this often because I want to parrot him, because he said, look, get it together, get the security stuff right, get all this detection, get everything that we can do, get it together or go out of business. And it was like a visceral gut punch. But he's tweeted just recently, hey, you know, I was watching a partner that we just kind of brought in that specializes in PII, public health information just as well, that was recently ransomed. RDP was exposed across their Win 11 enterprise. They had a network-level authentication disabled without a password complexity policy, the basics. And check it out. Here's on Shodan. Here's that good Internet of Things search engine, and there's a freaking RDP. You can see it right now. If we want to take a look at some of the logs, the other screenshot is using Chainsaw to cut through the Windows event logs and to see some network RDP connection activities. So those hurt, and those suck. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, but let me go out on another limb here, because I think when you get to listen to me or when you get to listen to any other speaker or anyone up here and we say the same things, we say, hey, that password policy, hey, don't plug in USB drives, hey, multi-factor authentication, you know. You've heard that already. You've heard it before. And I don't want you to have that takeaway. That's a boring takeaway. Layered security, defense in depth, buzzword, yes, yep, I know. So I could keep screaming and shouting to patch your Microsoft Exchange. I know it's not always a reality. I know that training and things. One thing I do want to drill home is the ransomware initial access brokers and that wholesale access model. Some folks might not be familiar with wholesale access models. That's Costco for cybercrime. One thing to note that it exists. So if I may, I'll go out on the very, very last limb, and hopefully we can still have a little bit more time to chat for questions and anything. This is what I think are the better takeaways, and here's the food for thought that I'd like to offer you. And it might be harsh, I don't know. But I think you're going to hear throughout these next couple days a lot of the same stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we are focused, laser focused on one threat actor, Black Hat, Alphabet, ransomware gang. But ransomware gang, gonna drop ransomware. A lot of the tradecraft, I think, you'll see the same. We saw it at Microsoft, we saw these parallels, we see what we're seeing. So the question that I want to ask you, the food for thought, if I were to give you, hey, something to think about for the end of this talk here. What are we doing? What are we doing? And I mean that like collectively. I mean that us, hey, the nerds and geeks, the fellow folks like me, kind of chatting up on stage, showing this stuff. What are you doing? What are we doing for you, and what are you doing for you? Are some of those detection engineering opportunities, is some of that visibility, is some of that audit and logging things that you have turned on and enabled? Are we doing enough? Do we need to do more? That question that I might bring to you, because what do we need to do next? Black Hat is one thing, but we got Lockbit, we got Play, we got Conti, we got plenty of others that we have our hands full with. So again, sorry, I don't mean it that gut punch, but I do want to ask, hey, are these folks that we're hanging out and chatting with, are these the people that we can put our trust in and confidence in for 2023, 2024, 2025? Those are the questions that I want to ask, and I want you to be thinking about, because we're still on it, and we're still with it. And so some of that tradecraft for initial access, some of that stuff, all that initial execution that they were doing, seeing what they're doing in the wholesale access markets and the underground cybercrime forums, I wanted to keep those in mind. But that's my lasting question. What do we need to do next? With that, hey, if you want to chat with me a little bit more, don't scan QR codes if we learned anything from the Super Bowl last year. But that will give you a link to all of my things that you can track me down on the Twitterverse, on the LinkedIn, on the YouTubes, etc. And email, of course. So if you'd like it, hit me up. Don't be a stranger. I will try to get back to you. And of course, we're at the booth. Let me do one last bit as a funsies. Hey, we are going to be doing a little bit of a giveaway. We've got a solo stove pizza, so please come chat with us. Please come chat with me. Please come hang out at the booth, and maybe we can talk shop on last weekend's Black Cat incident. Would love to hang out, so thank you. How do we
John,
do, Wes?
That was awesome.
What do you think?
Super good. We have time for questions. Don't you love that? You were awesome. You have plenty of time for questions.
Well, I hope so.
And still jam-packed us with stuff.
Have the conversations.
So I'm hoping someone is coming up for some questions. If not, I will call you. You know that I will. We're going to give it just a minute. So maybe, John, I'll start with a question while someone comes up.
Okay.
It seems like more of the same, but also little bits that are different, right?
Yeah.
Like in terms of like these underground forums have been around since the days of like Black Sun Research Facility and all these like ancient sites. Like that's always been a tradecraft of them for the longest time. Any new iterations that you would point out from Black Cat or anyone else specific that seems to be pushing the envelope other than what you've talked about?
Not that we are able to see. Because again, I was beating up the word sophisticated because, hey, threat actors and hackers aren't often sophisticated. Because the 0 days, the hot, sexy vulnerabilities aren't going to be saved for the usual, for the norm, for what we're doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I've chatted with some folks that do even more, hey, fun dark web digging than I do. And it's very, very wild because they'll often be so integrated that they get to be part of the shopping list. They get to know and see, hey, what are the victims that we might be selling for access or for ransomware soon to come, and then they can go do some even better alerting. And all of that is in those deeper, darker, hey, yeah, private invite-only Telegram chats or silly jabber and talks. What we might just be able to have fun finding all on the dark web, searching around for onion sites. I wish I would be able to more that it's low tier, quote unquote, but it's still wonderful education and I hope some great value for you. There are others. Genesis Market is one I didn't showcase, but that often steals like fingerprints or browser sessions and cookies so they can just be slapped out to others, handed out like hotcakes for more initial access. But some of the hot, sexy stuff is truthfully behind closed doors.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Got a question?
Yeah. I don't know. Can you hear? Maybe
Yep.
not.
I got you now.
Okay. All right. So a lot of focus on Active Directory and server type implementations. But what about Endpoint Manager / Intune, Azure Active Directory joined devices without servers? How are you seeing threats as far as in individuals on those types of machines that are managed by those types of controls and policies being applied? If they get compromised, what type of lateral exposure do you have there? What are some things? I mean, you know, it hasn't really had a massive adoption yet, so is it almost kind of like not really as popular, so they haven't really been focusing, or are you seeing that they're waking up to those concepts and really pushing that envelope in those areas as well?
Oh, super good question. I don't know if I'd have an awesome case study to just rip off the cuff, but I guess I can give a confident yes to the answer to your question. Take that with a grain of salt, but it's when you see a lot of the tools and utilities that will grant some of that overarching, hey, hands and everything to be able to push updates, or to be able to make changes, or to be able to do that configuration across many. You need that for your own sanity and management. But for threat actors or adversaries, that is obviously the crown jewel, because you're the mothership. You're the root of the hive. You're the roots of the tree that has many branches. But that's a conversation I think we often have. And Wes, I'd love to kind of t-ball with you here. That's the whole security burden of managed service providers.
It is indeed, right. And bad guys have woken up to that. I think 2018 and onward, we've seen that they understand the MSP, they understand its implications, they understand it's an extremely high value target. I remember looking at this, I mean, you take an average MSP of like 35 to 70 clients, each with endpoints of, you know, call it 50 to 150, and that's a large company. That's a large company under an MSP. So of course you're gonna become, you know, a significant target. So, yeah.
We talk a little bit about the supply chain, right? And again, I know, hey, buzzword things that we just tend to throw out, but we talk about the one-to-many relationship. Hit one domino, all fall. I think that's very, very evident, and we've seen, what, Log4j, the silly example, right? Too trite, too saturated, but it's an example. When we see others' vulnerabilities or issues, or even just something that can hit multiple targets, that's what hackers want. Fast, lazy, and the biggest bang for your buck.
And I also think, if I may, we almost have to push adversaries into doing innovation, right? Because otherwise, like Mackenzie Brown, she'll probably mention this after lunch, this whole idea of like, from the Microsoft perspective, if you just enable 2FA, it's amazing how many of the attacks that they've seen that would have just killed out. And I know that's old, like we know this. We've been talking about this for, I think, half a decade now. And yet they're still preaching that. Microsoft is still preaching that. So I still think we are struggling with that. Another example would be now that Exchange and online has pushed out macros from being default, that you can't get that through, now you're seeing an iteration, innovation. Now they're starting like OneNote malware and things like that. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. We're starting to see them use that as an avenue in instead of sending a macro. So I think we're in that still age of like, us today in this audience is like, why are we not seeing more innovation? There ought to be more, because they don't have to. It's still plucking cherries right now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So something I wanted to touch on real quickly was I like how you've presented the mundanity that these actors are acting with. Ultimately, they're really just people like us doing the opposite thing. And I think that was an important thing that you touched on. So Really, that last little bit there kind of addressed my question, which is how mundane do you feel like these actors are kind of taking it? I mean, like, what is the threat scope for an average MSP or a client in terms of like the complexity of the methods that they're using?
Super good question. And it's not always a good answer, I think. So forgive me if I'm kind of finding in the dark where that might be. But the word that I always keep coming back to when I talk about threat actors, hackers, adversaries, cybercrime, is that it's become so commoditized. I was kind of alluding to, look, there's an enterprise, there's an industry, there's these syndicates and groups that get together and they've got business. They make this thing that it's now, table stakes is another word that we've come to. I think if anyone wants Cobalt Strike version 4.5, whatever, you can go download it. It's cracked. Hey, it's accessible. If anyone wants to go be that ransomware operator, hey, I can go get Black Hat. Lockbit leaked their builder. I can go become Lockbit Black 3.0. And that's, to your question of the higher end, the greater tier that is the sexy stuff that you see in news headlines. When everyone's like, is AI gonna change the world? Are we gonna be out of jobs? Is ChatGPT gonna revolutionize hackers and adversaries? I don't know, because I'm not Nostradamus. I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't think so yet. Maybe this is just a John opinion. I haven't drank the Kool-Aid yet. It will help and enable those script kiddies, those low-tier stuff, but the headlines, the big sexy 0 days, I don't think so. So.
Yep. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I have another question for you if we're waiting for other folks. Oh, you got a question for you? I'm going to table for yours, my friend. I see that smile coming up. Here comes a big knowledge bomb.
First off, thank you for doing this, and I love your video series.
Thank you.
I am an active subscriber, like probably most people in here.
Thank you.
My question is, for those of us that are brave enough to go onto the dark web, what's the safest way to do that so that you don't end up in those sites that you can't really scrape out of your mind? Or that might end you, in some place.
Did you end up in like the
with
Red
iron
Room or something
bars
scary?
and
Yeah.
Very big people.
Boring answer yet again, but I use Tails, classic typical Linux distribution, just jump in there. I use Hunix, which is meant to be a little bit more accessible, rather than just plugging in a live USB like Tails recommends you do all the time. Hunix is an option. One of the cool new hot things people chat about is Cubes OS, and like every single application is virtualized and optimized as if it's its own operating system. But that's a little bit nerdy, and I don't mean to drive too far down. But inside of a virtual machine, the best I can, inside of a separate machine that I don't use for physical actual work, it's just really, I had a stupid thing up here, don't scan QR codes, when that's a question mark and an option for everyone. Like, that's your decision. That's your risk and your threat model. So when we get to the conversations of like, hey, should I use a VPN? That's up to you. Boring, bad answer. But whatever you can for a lot of that defense in depth, for that layered security, for that access control, keep things far away.
Have you ever heard of like a Torbot for like indexing?
Yeah.
So,
It's very cool.
okay, thanks.
Sweet. Hey, we should chat more on some of those dark web shenanigans. That'd be fun.
Appreciate it.
Hey, so you got the Heisenberg uncertainty principle where you can't observe something without influencing it. How long do we have before we see the next generation of the bad actor industry evolve to say, oh crap, it's Huntress, everybody hide, and be aware of the observational practices and insight into the bad actor community. So, what happens when they, anti-industrialize against the cybersecurity industry, and, what does an anti-cybersecurity industry really look like in terms of observing our observation of them?
That's a super good question. I was on a cheesy webinar some time ago with MCSoft, and there's another great researcher there, Brett Callow, and he tracks a whole lot of those other ransomware groups. And there are reporters like Lawrence Abrams over at Bleeping Computer that will shine the spotlight on hackers, threat actors, adversaries, and cybercrime. And it's fun when the threat actors notice. I had an interview with a fellow over at CyberInt, and that was out on YouTube, and then the threat actor group's Twitter account DM'd me. And they said, hey, that was really cool, guys. I'm like, okay, that's weird. But it's weird when you get to the conversation of, are we enabling more cybercrime and hacks and ransomware because we talk about it, because we put it in the spotlight? Yes. I don't know. Hey, one Black Hat finds out we had a Write a Boom conference, all of talking about Black Hat. I don't know. Weird thing to think about. But when they make fun of or post or change their profile picture to those reporters, or they try to say, hey, this person is a bad word, not safe for work, pejorative, it happens. Sorry, anyway, enough of that background. I think when we get to your question, we are moving the needle. So if I had a very pessimistic kind of a Debbie Downer for an ending of the talk, let me kind of bring this to a more optimistic thing, and that we are making the difference. We are challenging them and forcing them to get a little bit more sophisticated, as much as I hate that word. We have been trying, and very slowly, and I think we have some really cool proof of concepts then where we can fight back and do that weird countermeasure or vaccine for a whole lot of different malware strains. And it forces them to do the secure cat and mouse, but we just got to keep staying up on the front lines and with the edge of it. That's the stuff that I'm excited about, and I think that's the best way to combat that anti-cybercrime community that you're chatting about. So,
Thank you.
hopefully, thank you.
On that note, I do have what might be like a silly question, but I wonder if there's ever going to be kind of a stopping point, right? Are we ever going to get to a point where these people can't do anything except really, really, really high level, talented hacker, that kind of thing? Like, is this ever going to not be a problem?
You're getting to that optimist and pessimist talk again, right? Put me in the hot spot.
Making you end on a pessimist note. Like, gotta
Bring it back. Bring it back. No. We're moving the needle. We're making the difference. Is there ever going to be a point that we've boarded up all the windows? Pessimist says no. And that's a weird thing. Like, we're on the treadmill.
I think it's fair to say the realist says no as well.
Okay, realist says no.
Are we going to see crime disappear at any point in time? Probably not, right? Like,
No, but it'll be what the optimist in you says that at some point this will be not completely boarded up, obviously, but to a point where it's not as much of a prevalent threat as it is right now.
The optimist in me says we're ready for it. And if I could tie this, hey, to, Write a Boom, I think it's because we've come to this conclusion and we've all agreed, hey, we've stacked for decades in the prevention category, in the protect, but it's going to happen. So maybe the optimist says, hey, if we never get off the treadmill, we're ready. And we can detect and we can respond and we can recover and all the things we're going to keep chatting about in the next couple of days. I think maybe there's the optimist. What say you, Wes?
I just love the fact that you're looking for the optimism, and it's awesome of you.
Oh, shoot. Sorry, guys. Goodness.
No, I commend you for that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for the question. Maybe just one last question that I have for you, John. When we look at the Ukrainian conflict as the lens, we know that we've seen like cyber insurance claims come way far down. Incidents have come way far down. I think we can say, especially with some of the new research coming out, that Russia's focus has been to Ukraine. And we've seen, I think it was like a last study I saw showed about a 200 to 300% increase in the volume of attacks from Russia to Ukraine. So a new focus on them, right? Are there any lessons learned that you've seen out of the Ukrainian conflict that might have greater implications should a greater conflict come to bear from a kinetic side into a large digital side as well?
I'm going to go in a couple different directions there, so hopefully we can find some cohesive thing to land on. But I think what we see in the world conflict, Russia-Ukraine, because there are a whole lot of folks that were chatting about, is this going to be the cyber war that we've seen, or that we've ever alluded to in movies and news, et cetera? I'll touch on that in just a moment, but I think as you were mentioning, like, hey, if we're seeing different attacks, we're seeing different things, a lot of it becomes to that more militaristic deny, disrupt, degrade, 5D thing. I hope you get the idea with that. Because when we saw the hermetic wiper or the wiper malware that was coming out, like, it's all about, like, I don't care if it's ransom, I don't care about the money, I just want it killed. In the cybersecurity sense, destroy it. Maybe that's something to think about and note. The bigger question, I think, that a lot of folks that I might bring this to more of the layman, or the more folks that aren't too nerdy digging into hermetic wipers and malware and all. When folks ask that question, is this the cyber war? Is the cyber war going to happen? Again, John, totally John opinion. I haven't drank the Kool-Aid yet. I don't know. I don't think so. We can see those examples for the hermetic wiper and other malware, but this is again going to be a sharp, stark one. Forgive me. If you want to do damage, artillery still works. It works just as well. So I don't think we're going to see yet that cyber war. But thank you for pushing me into that dark, unknown area, Wes.
You're welcome. John, thank you so very much. That was
thank you, man.
awesome.
This was fun.
Rocking
A lot of fun.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.